Yo, welcome everybody to another Monday Overreaction, I guess, podcast, videocast, whatever you want to call it. Welcome to the Orangebloods Texas Football Channel. I'm Geoff Ketchum, joined by Anwar Richardson. We are overreacting to Steve Sarkisian's Monday morning press conference, if you will, although I suppose we could overreact to anything from the weekend. Anwar, I'll let you lead us off. Where's your head at today? What are we overreacting to in the beginning?
Remember, I have so many thoughts, right? So from the press conference, I'll give you some general thoughts, and then I'll tell you about the press conference. General thoughts heading into this Tech game, Catch, and hearing, Sarkeesian talk about this program and Tech. There's a part of me, Catch, that does not really know what to make of this Texas football team. There's a part that I'd look at the Louisiana game, but I look at Arkansas. Rice obviously is a tune-up. So, you have 2 games and 2 wins against non-Power 5 programs and one really bad loss against what we would probably consider, we'll see how it all shapes up, but at the time, kind of a bottom tier of the SEC program. Tech has always played Texas tough. We know that by a game that they had to literally come back from something that was mathematically improbable to do. So I don't know what to make of this Texas team, and I feel like we'll know a little bit more. There was a couple of interesting things from Sarkeesian. I thought, one of the questions I kind of asked him about Casey being a gamer, and I thought his answer was really fascinating and really revealing. Because I wasn't quite sure how he was going to answer that. And the fact that he essentially talked about all these things that you can measure, but then there's just seems to be this different switch that Casey hits in a game that it just maybe doesn't always hit in practice. So seeing that, I thought was interesting. We talked, and Casey actually spoke today. You don't know, but Casey actually spoke to us today. To the media member, and he was asked about, hey, does that gamer label bother you? He's like, not at all. He understands and he embraces it. So I thought those are a couple of things that kind of have stood out, which is I got a team that we're covering that I don't know what to make. Catch, if you tell me today, they win the next 3, I say, okay. If you tell me they lose the next 3, I'll say, okay, just because it's just hard to tell right now.
Yeah, I mean, look, it is a team that, you wrote about it in your Sunday pulpit yesterday that the season will largely be defined by the next 3 games. So we're going to find out real quickly, I think, the direction of this season and what it's totally made out of. It is a team that in all 3 phases of the game, it's hard to put your thumb on exactly what this is. Is this defense more like the unit that has kept 2 teams below 20 points this season, including a shutout this weekend against Rice? Or is it the team that I think on that side of the ball quit a week ago against Arkansas? Is this an offense that can run the ball at will like it did against Rice? Is this a team with an offensive line problem? I mean, it was really hard coming out of Saturday talking about the offensive line in the midst of a 58-0 game. It's like, oh, Casey Thompson took some hits and you're a little bit worried about pass protection and things like that. But at the same time, you win 58-0, and it feels a little bit like real nitpicking coming out of a game that they win by almost 60 points, 9 touchdowns.
Yeah.
To be in a position where you're nitpicking a little bit. And I think Texas Tech's a perfect game for this upcoming weekend. I don't think they're ready for TCU. I think they need another game against a team with a pulse to figure out a little bit more of who it is, what they need to do, who needs to be on the field in games like TCU and Oklahoma. I'm still not certain that the coaching staff completely knows who it can trust on both sides of the ball. And so, really, Texas Tech, it's a perfect time for them on the schedule because they're not toothless, but they're also not quite the challenges, and it's at home. They're not quite the challenges that Texas will see, I think, later on in the season. Now, I have a little bit of an overreaction on a Monday that I know that, I've seen the reactions from it in my article that I wrote, my 10 thoughts from the weekend, which you can read over at orangebloods.com. By the way, do us a solid, like the video, subscribe to the channel, do all that stuff that I forgot to mention in the very beginning. Just chalk it up as a Monday. I am a little bit worried about this offense because Saturday felt like, I went back and rewatched the game a couple of times on Sunday before the NFL action kicked in. And you could see that Sarkeesian, from a game planning standpoint, wanted to give Thompson some easy throws, wanted to give him something that the offense could build some momentum on, which was in short supply in the Arkansas game. But that game plan was so different than what Texas attempted to do versus Louisiana and Arkansas that it does still feel like the offense 25% of the way through the season is trying to figure out exactly who they're going to be, who are going to be the guys that help them be the team that they're going to be. And in the passing game, I don't really worry about Casey Thompson. I don't. I've got some question marks about the passing game, but a lot of that has to do with an offensive line that I don't trust. It has to do with a wide receiving unit that has given us something different in every single game. And I don't know who to count on Saturday. I don't know if Texas has more than 2 wide receivers that they can really count on going into conference play. And I just wonder a little bit what the offense is going to look like under Casey Thompson, because it felt very controlled on Saturday. Everything was screens and toss passes and short throws. At some point, this offense this season has got to expand the sandbox in which they play in, and they haven't done that yet. So you're going into conference play, and Anwar, you're not who you want to be yet. You're still trying to figure out what that is. And as somebody whose job in a weird way is to worry about these things, or at least pay attention to these things, it's hard for a few alarm bells to not go off that we still have more questions than answers with the offensive side of the ball, especially in the passing game.
That's a fascinating observation. I would like to ask you a question on that.
Sure.
When a team drops 58 points, the way it did against Rice, how is it? How could you have? What makes you have questions? What do you question from what you saw that you might believe it could be potentially fool's gold? Is it because you felt like because even the conservative play calling, just about every drive resulted in a touchdown, right? So I'm just kind of will see if you can expand on that a little bit.
Well, I just think that I go back to when Shane Buechele was the starting quarterback at Texas. You got to go back a few years, right? We're talking 4 or 5 seasons ago when he first started taking off. Buechele was, I think, known for being a more accurate passer than Sam Ehlinger. But sometimes the passing offense was restricted to a smaller area of the field. Let's say like a 10-yard box with which they mostly operated from. That was a little bit of what Texas did on Saturday. Everything was kind of within a 10-yard box of the line of scrimmage. It's not something that matters against Rice, but when you play against better teams moving forward, Texas's ability to make the field bigger so that it can get its players in space so that they can make plays will be something that they'll want to do. And when you play better teams, when you play TCU and Oklahoma in a few weeks, you don't want the field to get what defenses want to do is make the field smaller for them, that they can have guys, as many guys as possible in the area where they think the ball's going to go. And when I rewatched the game yesterday, I just found myself asking questions. How much will this work in future games? It may be that it works fine. It may be that we saw the beginning of what this new Texas offense looks like with Casey Thompson as the quarterback, and that maybe they'll expand it little bit by little bit moving forward. I just watched that game plan on Saturday, and I like the game plan. And I think it's stuff that they should have done more of against Arkansas. I just wanted to see more of a mix of Texas being able to get the ball to its receivers down the field a little bit more than they did Saturday against Rice. When you couple that with what didn't happen against Arkansas, we've just now got Texas. If I'm not mistaken, the stat is they're 1 of 14 this year, regardless of who the quarterback is, of passes down the field 20 yards or more. I mean, it goes without saying that that's something that they've got to improve. But I'm slightly concerned about Texas. We feel like Xavier Worthy and probably Jordan Whittington are two guys that they can trust, right? I mean, do you feel that way?
Right. Yes.
Is there anybody else at the receiving position right now that, let's say, going into TCU, you trust at the wide receiver position?
Not yet.
So this isn't a Casey Thompson or Hudson Card discussion for me, as much as this is still an offense that's trying to create more playmakers and more players that it can trust. If you're Oklahoma or TCU in a couple of weeks, and even Texas Tech this weekend, it feels like containing this Texas offense, is, at least on paper, you can kind of shore it up to a couple of things. And I think the Texas offense has got to continue to grow and expand over the course of this season from where it is now, if it wants to be a championship type team.
Interesting. Yeah. You look back to the Louisiana game, that there wasn't those kind of, offensive explosions or super explosive plays. There were some good plays that had some individual efforts for gains, like the Jordan Whittington one, I think at the 41-yarder. Like, I think a lot of that was like an effort type of thing from the guys. But even within that, it was, there was a little bit more east, seemed like a lot of east-west, going on. I think we saw that in Arkansas, and I think we at times were probably questioning the play calling, right? And saying like, man, this seems like they're doing some obvious plays here. Are they going to mix it up a little bit, do a play action, like something? You didn't see that. So I can see from that perspective, Ketch, where, at some point when we're talking about games in the Big 12 that, could potentially high scoring, like the OU game, right? I think you and I could probably think today OU Texas will be a high scoring game, right? I don't think neither one of us are at this moment super, super overly like.
You think it takes 35 to win that game?
Easily.
Yeah. Okay.
Easily. Because I would say 20s probably wins TCU, right? I mean, just based off of history, 28 probably wins a TCU kind of game. So yeah, it'll be interesting now in Big 12 play Tech, which, Sarkeesian talked about their run game and how strong that is, and but what they're able to do from a passing game. But, they're a team that's going to be able to put up some points. Yeah, it will be very interesting if there has to get tick for tack, shootouts, whatever the case may be. Who are the guys that now we'll see Casey? Who does he go to? Like, who becomes his go-to guys? We know the rapport with Xavier is there. It's funny, he was asked about Xavier, wanting the football today, and he joked, when you've heard this joke before, of course, where he goes, well, every receiver on the team wants the football. I hear it all the time. So, but you see that, you see Jordan, and then we got to see what happens from the tight end position. I think you and I think highly of Jared Wiley, and he did have that touchdown pass, but, there's clearly other reasons why, he's not a starter, and in blocking probably has something to do with it. So yeah, I'll be interested to see, now that it counts and the bullets are live, what this, this offense looks like. And if they can continue to build off of what they did against Rice.
Yeah, I think the sample size is so small that, I think you'd be silly to overreact and say, well, clearly Jordan Whittington and Hudson Card have all the chemistry, and Xavier Worthy and Casey Thompson have all the chemistry, right? Because Hudson Card made an effort to get the ball to Jordan Whittington. That really didn't happen on Saturday. On Saturday, they made a real point of emphasis that when there was a touch in the passing game to be had, Xavier Worthy was kind of the guy that they want to direct that to. I'm curious to see what the offense looks like moving forward. I don't really have any strong opinions about who leads the passing game right now. I would have thought that it would be Jordan Whittington. Now, he did have his hands on 3 passes against Arkansas that he didn't come down with catches that could have changed the direction of that game, all things being said. You know, if he, as poor of a throw as Hudson Card makes, if Jordan Whittington is a pro receiver and catches the ball in the end zone against Arkansas, that whole game could change in terms of the texture, in terms of Hudson Card might still be the starting quarterback if that game's close at halftime because Texas is on the board and then they score early in the second half. And now you've got a little bit of a ball. I mean, you just never know.
Correct.
You know, when we've seen Thompson come in at quarterback to replace Hudson Card, it has been a big win for Xavier Worthy so far. Yes. And more than anything, I think it's been a big win for the Texas tight end position. I think Casey Thompson being on the field elevates the tight ends in the passing game. And I think that's a really good thing. It was a good thing on Saturday. I mean, we started to see the tight end involved in the passing game in ways that were productive and helped the offense. So you feel like that's something that they can build on. It's as simple as this. Texas can't win a Big 12 championship, in my estimation, if they're playing in a phone booth in a very restricted area offensively. I'm not saying that they are. I'm just saying that one of the things that comes out of Saturday's game was how much Sark really wanted to keep the passing game simple, short passes, easy to complete passes, try to get your receivers in a position where, and when we say receivers, mainly Xavier Worthy, in a position where they can make things happen after the catch. I just want to see what the evolution of this offense is going to look like because it needs to continue. They've got to be able to expand the field. And it may be a good thing that Casey Thompson is in there because it was an area that Hudson Card struggled in. It's an area where, in general, the Texas offense has to get better throwing the ball down the field, or they're going to play defenses that crowd the area where they are having the most success. And if you're an opposing defense, then I think it comes down to a couple of things. A, stop the run, win your battles up front along the line of scrimmage. We know this Texas offensive line is not going to manhandle people. So, you know, I don't even know what to take out of the Rice game. I'm curious to see what it looks like this weekend against Texas Tech, but I guarantee the Texas Tech coaches are telling their players, you can beat these guys. And then right now, if I'm an opposing defense, we're not letting Xavier Worthy beat us after the catch. We're tackling that guy. And I don't know, you know, I think it's, if you're an opposing defense, it's like, hey, we're going to keep everything in front of us. And if we keep everything in front of us and we stop the run, that's going to make Texas have to go 8-10 plays down the drive. And this team's not good enough to go 8 or 10 plays without screwing it up. And so, you know, I think Sarkeesian mentioned early in the season, he likes offensive drives that are shorter rather than longer. Because I think he understands more than anybody. It's hard to go 10 plays down the field, executing on every single play in a way that gets you into the end zone. It's a lot easier when it only takes 4 plays, and a whole bunch of that comes in a big chunk. This is a Texas offense that, with all due respect to the run game against Rice, it still feels like in tougher games this season, they're going to have to kind of slug their way to scoring points offensively. The sooner that they can be a little bit more dynamic and explosive down the field, the better this team gets infinitely on that side of the ball. And it's just an area they haven't had a lot of success so far this season in, that we're projecting that they will improve. But for me, until it happens, it's a bit of a question mark.
I got a guessing game for you. Okay.
Go for it.
As you were doing that, I was looking up some stuff. People should know by now when they watch the videos, when they start, you see me doing this, it means I'm looking up something. I'm doing some research on the spot. If you had to guess, I don't know if you know the answer to this question. So if you tell me, hey, I already know, then we won't play the game. Total offense. Total offense. Where do you think Texas is ranked in the Big 12 right now?
Fifth? I didn't look at the Big 12 stats, so this is a game I don't know the answers to.
That right now, you're correct. They are fifth with an average of 437, with Baylor at 1, OU at 2, TCU at 3, Tech at 4. And then there's Texas.
Real quick, I know we're going to go back to the game. Just for the record, Texas Tech's underlying numbers on both sides of the ball, sneaky okay. They haven't been great. You can look at their wins and losses, but it's a team with the pulse that comes to DKR this weekend. It's one of the reasons why I think it's a good game for Texas. Keep going.
All right. So second of 3. Scoring offense. Where do you think Texas ranks from a scoring offense standpoint?
5th?
Tied for 5th with West Virginia. A good one. Again, Baylor at 1, OU at 2.
What are they averaging?
Baylor is averaging 46 points a game.
Okay.
46.7. Oklahoma is averaging 46.3. Texas Tech, they are averaging 40. TCU is averaging 39.5. And Tech in West Virginia averaging 39 points a game. So 46 as the leader, 39.
Not a whole lot separated any of those teams, though.
Correct. And here is I think the more interesting one, and I probably should not have prefaced that. Where do you think Texas ranks? Third one ranks from a passing offense perspective.
Now, this one I should know because I looked this up yesterday. They were 66th in the nation after week 2 in offense. I think they're 49th or 46th or something like that in the nation in the passing game. And this is passing yards per game, right?
Correct.
I'm going to go 7th.
You have nailed it. You've done 3 for 3.
I knew they weren't 5th. So I knew it was a matter of where after they're not the worst. What stood out to me was that in terms of passing yards per game, they rank behind Georgia Tech. Georgia Tech runs like the option. It's a Texas offense that is still trying to find its way. And again, to me, this isn't a Casey Thompson, Hudson Card conversation. Casey Thompson is the starting quarterback for Texas. And I think there are some questions. It doesn't mean like critical critiques because the sample size just isn't big enough yet. There's some questions that you can have about Casey Thompson and Hudson Card. And for me, they're completely different. The one similarity between the two is that both guys need to, if either of those guys is your quarterback, based on the sample size that we have, they both have got to do a better job of pushing the ball down the field and completing passes, let's say deeper than 15 yards in the air. The question with Casey Thompson that I think with Hudson Card that ends the quarterback debate is that against a good team, Hudson Card flinched in a big bad way. And Casey Thompson, up until now, has not been a flincher. That decides the quarterback battle. Yeah. So now it's Casey Thompson's your quarterback. What does your passing offense look like? And how do you get better and expand it? And I think that's where Texas is. From a quarterback efficiency standpoint, Casey Thompson, I'm curious of what Texas's passing efficiency looks like over the course of the season because they've had 2 really good games and 1 stinker. So my guess is they're probably in the top 3rd in the country in passing efficiency as a team, which is a good thing. And I think they can get better. I just think that, there are different questions that we're going to start asking about this passing offense through the first quarter of the season onward. It's been about who the quarterback is going to be. I think moving forward, that conversation is going to stop taking place for the most part, unless Casey Thompson just is awful in a game. Yeah. It's his job. Yeah, so correct. Now it's what does that offense look like in his hands? And I think that's one of the things that Sarkeesian is still figuring out. On Saturday, that offense was predominantly very constrained and most of the passes were near the line of scrimmage or in a small box. And that's not a Casey Thompson problem for me. It's just a little bit more of well, the Texas offense can't just be that because it's not going to be against Rice every week. But I'm curious to see Thompson continue to grow at the position and Sarkeesian's comfort level with him as a play caller. I guess I'll say it like this. You got Sarkeesian to call Casey a gamer today, right?
Yeah.
Which is an interesting way of thinking about your quarterback because it almost means you have to render what you see during the week as not the most useful body of like information to help you with. And I thought Saturday, Sarkeesian coached Thompson like Thompson was a bad practice player. So give him some easy throws, give him some stuff that is out of his hands and put in. But I think you have to treat Casey Thompson without training wheels. And when this offense can get to the point where Sarkeesian is comfortable with, on the flip side, I think Sarkeesian called offensive game plan with Hudson Card like Hudson was a great practice player. So you're seeing suddenly they're trying to push the ball down the field more. It's not working, but they tried. On Saturday, it felt like Sarkeesian was like, okay, I've got a quarterback I don't trust a lot. So real short, simple throws. Thompson handled that with ease. Now Sarkeesian has to look at what he has in a game-ready quarterback. He's the one that I think has to get comfortable with the personnel that he has at his disposal. And as weird as it is to say in a 58-0 game, it felt like he's still getting comfortable with who he's working with personnel-wise on the offensive side of the ball. This might be as much about Sarkeesian in the next couple of games as it is about Casey Thompson.
You know, the fascinating thing about this conversation that we're having is you think back, Ketch, to last year in the Alamo Bowl, right? And how fantastic Casey Thompson looked in that game. And then you and I check in our sources and you're thinking everyone's going to be like, it's amazing. Like he absolutely. And they were saying, we never saw that in practice. We don't know. It was like, it was an out of body experience. And and that previous staff said, nah, Hudson still will be the guy. Like that in their mind.
They felt like that was fool's gold.
Correct. And so what happened and clearly is that Sark started watching practices. And clearly, if, let's just be honest, if Casey Thompson did what he does in games, in practices, he would have emerged as the starter, right? Yeah. I mean, everything was based off of what he saw in practice. Like that was how it was what happened. And I don't know how Sark processes this, because it's a fascinating thing.
It is.
Maybe someone doesn't look excellent in practice, and you've got to your point, Ketch, you've got to ignore that. You've got to ignore the bad throw, the errant throw, to whatever, and think to yourself, it doesn't matter. It's Tuesday. It doesn't matter. It's Wednesday. It doesn't matter. It's Friday. Install a game plan then with the thought process that on Saturday, it just all comes together. And somehow it does, but it's almost like the A-team. And you know how you remember the old A-team stuff? And it would they would start on a mission and then everything would go to hell. They got to get Mr. T on the plane and he don't want to get on a plane and all these type of things. And at the end of every single one, Hannibal is smoking his cigar, right? And it's like he loved it when the plan comes together. And that's what this thing seems to be like. See, I don't go with the movie references, but I'll give you some TV show references. And that's what it seems to be like. At the end of the day, it's like, I don't know, but somehow, some way, it all comes together.
It's a tricky thing because I guarantee you before the season started, I guess I can't guarantee you, but it feels like the new staff, primarily Sarkeesian and the offensive coaches, came away feeling about Casey Thompson the way the old staff did. They see him every day in practice. They weren't impressed enough to choose him. And, whatever that means is whatever that means. it goes against everything that these coaches preach day in and day out. Play like you practice. It's a hell of a thing when the most important player on the field, your quarterback, is a guy that you somewhat have to ignore that kind of stereotype, that adage that I feel like every coach subscribes to. You can't, you be what you're going to be on Saturday, on Wednesday. That's what I need to see. And it'll be something that Sarkeesian has to juggle moving forward. It's a hell of a thing to train yourself to not trust your eyeballs. But I'm telling Sarkeesian, going into these future games, he has to trust Thompson on Saturdays in ways that Monday through Thursday, he doesn't always feel like he can trust. And that conflict is the thing that this Texas offense will need to be, because I'm just telling you right now, if they go into the Cotton Bowl against Oklahoma or against TCU in Fort Worth, and they can't throw the ball down the field at all, they're not going to win those games. They have got to find a way, make the field big, so that when Bijan Robinson and Xavier Worthy, and when their skill players get the ball in space, they got to have a little bit of room. And the thing that worried me on Saturday was it looked like the backup quarterback was playing. It looked like Sarkeesian game planned the passing game and the quarterback play around the backup quarterback, because the backup's playing, something that you might have seen from Texas A&M this past week after they lose their starting quarterback. And then in his first week as a starter, I bet if we go, I didn't see the A&M New Mexico game, but I bet if we did, I bet we'd see a lot of the same things. He can't treat Casey Thompson with training wheels. And he's just going to have to trust that dude, that when the lights come on and there's another team, not the Longhorns across the way from him, that he's more trustworthy when the game starts than he is in practice, because that's how Texas, I think, is going to win those games. If they are, they've got to be a little bit more dynamic. They're not going to have 3 runs of 60-plus yards against TCU and Oklahoma. You're going to have to – it got easy against Rice. Like, literally, when Bijan scored his long touchdown run, he started high-stepping, like, within 10 yards. And it was like he was giddy, because it was like, ain't nobody out here going to stop me from scoring.
Roshan Johnson looked like he had 4.4 speed. I mean, and you and I both love Roshan Johnson.
Yes.
Like, we both think he's a future NFL player. So, but neither one of us has ever said Roshan is a burner.
Yeah. He's pulling away from guys on Saturday.
Yeah. And when they play different competition, it'll be changed. I'm sorry to interrupt you. I just wanted to throw that in there.
No, we're on the exact same page. So for me, my overreaction on Monday today really isn't Casey Thompson based, only in the sense that I think starting this week, Sarkeesian week by week, he's got to get more comfortable with the fact that Casey Thompson is his quarterback, and that whatever he thinks he can allow Casey Thompson to do, I think you and I would say, give him a little bit more. Trust him a little bit more. We've seen nothing from Casey Thompson yet in a game that suggests he'll let you down. So, take Saturday's game plan against Rice, 58-0, A+, right? But it was a training wheels kind of game plan in the passing game. And I think Casey Thompson is a mature enough quarterback with a strong enough arm and enough playmaking ability that you've got to be able to trust him to do more. And look at that ball that he threw to Kelvontae Dixon on 3rd and 14 for 22 yards. They need to trust that Casey Thompson can make that throw and that his receivers can catch that ball. The problem is, it took them getting into a 3rd and 14 situation before they took the training wheels off and asked Thompson to make that kind of a throw. When it wasn't 3rd and 14, they didn't. I'm suggesting my overreaction today is that in games against Tech, TCU, and Oklahoma, that's got to be a first down play. And if you trust Casey Thompson on first down to make those throws, then I feel like the offense opens up in a way where if you need 35 to beat Oklahoma in a few weeks, that offense can give you 35 when the field gets real big. I'm not quite sure that it happens if everything's played in a phone booth. They played in a phone booth on Saturday, and it worked wonders. But you can't play in a phone booth every week. Teams will eventually get film, and they'll be like, oh, shit. Texas literally won't throw the ball further than 10 yards away from the line of scrimmage unless down in distance suggests that they have to. Good teams with good coaches and good defenses will eat that up. So Texas just got to grow a little bit. It's not even really an overreaction. It's just a reaction that don't get too excited by 58-0. Get excited that step one of the Casey Thompson experience went absolutely according to plan. He could not have delivered better on the game plan that he was given than he did on Saturday. Now, expand what you give him, because it's gonna take more to win those games.
Yeah, so I got two things, and this will be my final thing. I got a statement, and I got another question for you. What will be very interesting, Ketch, going forward, and everything you said is great, so I don't think I can add on to it. What will be very interesting is this will be the first game that Casey Thompson has played in where an opponent has game plan for him specifically.
Yeah.
Alamo Bowl, that no one game plan for him in the Alamo Bowl. Louisiana, the game plan was for Hudson Card, right? Arkansas, the game plan was how to attack and throw off Hudson Card. And then you have Rice that kind of comes in, and maybe you could say Rice somewhat game plan for him. But let's talk about what we consider to be a Power 5 program. I don't want to be disrespectful to Rice. It'll be his first real test where guys on the other side have film on you, right? Have enough film. They have, 3 quarters of being able to, or in other quarters, Arkansas, where they're like, this is the guy, these are his weaknesses, here's how we're going to attack him, here's how we're going to try to confuse him. It will be a huge test for him when now all of a sudden everybody is looking at you, game planning for you, not only, from a defensive standpoint, players, everything. So I will be very interested to see how he responds to that. So here's my final one, and this is one more question, and this one's putting you on the spot. Everything we've talked about, I'm going to give you 4 scenarios.
Okay.
You tell me what you think is the most likely scenario through the next 3 games.
Okay.
3-0, 2-1, 1-2, 0-3. And feel free, as you watch this video, to put that in the comments of what you think. We're talking Texas Tech at home, at TCU, and then the OU game. 3-1, 2-1, 1-2, 0-3. From what you think, as of right now, and everything can change, what are you thinking?
I'm stuck somewhere between 1-2 and 2-1. Yeah. So I'm like 1.5 and 1.5. It's not a real answer, but it's weird. I instinctively am chalking the Texas Tech game up as a win this weekend, but I think that's going to be a 4-quarter game. I mean, ever since you've arrived on the beat, the Texas Tech games have been very competitive. So I don't know why that would change this weekend. I have a real hard time giving this team the benefit of the doubt right now in Fort Worth. And as beatable as Oklahoma looks in September, that'll be the 6th game of the season for Oklahoma.
Yeah.
A year ago proved this. Oklahoma, when you want to get them, is in September. I weirdly kind of feel the same way about Texas this year, in that I really think towards the end of the season, let's say Casey Thompson's making his 8th or 9th start of the year in November. Mm-hmm. This conversation that we're having today about Sarkeesian needing to trust his quarterback and know what he can and can't expect out of him. Yeah. We won't be having that in November, which makes Texas a better football team when this coaching staff really knows its personnel frontwards and backwards like the back of their hand in a big game situation. Oklahoma in October is just a different animal than them playing Nebraska this past weekend.
You remember a couple of years ago, Ketch, when Oklahoma almost lost to Army at home?
Yeah.
I mean, that was a September game.
In September.
That was a September game.
And what it leads to is October is so close to September that Texas are, oh man, Oklahoma's, we got this. We can beat that team. And it's like, okay, but just so you know, every year, like you can almost set your watch by it. Oklahoma will be the best version of themselves against Texas more times than not. That's who they are in that game. The game in Fort Worth right now, I don't know how to call. They won't win that game. I don't believe Texas beats TCU in Fort Worth unless Sarkeesian and the trust that he has in Thompson grows significantly this week and next week. And I mean, you know, you say 2 games in 2 weeks, but you know, they got like 6 practices and 2 games and a game to get ready for that game. I don't think offensively what they did, if you're a defense and you're playing Texas right now, and maybe 1 game film is not enough, right? You don't want to overreact to just what they did against Rice. But if you're TCU and you're Oklahoma, you're going to pay really close attention to what Texas does offensively this week. Because if I'm a defensive coordinator, stop the run and make Texas throw the ball down the field to beat you. That's it. Mm-hmm. They have not, no matter who the quarterback's been, they have not yet shown the capacity to get the timing down on throws down the field in a way that would really scare you. So, I mean, I think they're 1 of 14 on those throws this season through 3 games. Unacceptable, regardless of who the quarterback is. And look, a lot of that's on Hudson Card. But the thing that we knew about Casey Thompson, at least in summer workouts, was that he had a rep for being a guy that, I don't want to say the check down king, but he's a guy that throws, he is most comfortable short and intermediate in practice. In games, or in practices, he hasn't been making those throws. Card made those throws and completed them in practice, which is one of the reasons why he won the job. But even then, you guys would come back from practice and say, I think Casey Thompson throws a prettier ball than Hudson Card.
And then I would get massacred for that, by the way.
But it hasn't materialized in games yet. You still wouldn't come away and say, aha, Thompson does make those throws consistently, and the offense can feature those types of throws. If I'm a defensive coordinator right now getting ready for Texas, you win your battle up front on the against that offensive line. You tackle well against Bijan Robinson. Don't let him make 30 out of 3. And then you're begging Texas, take your shots. Take your shots, because you don't do that well right now. And if they eventually get to a point where they start doing that really well, then I think this entire offense takes off to the moon. But until they do, I think it's a really simplistic defensive strategy that you're implementing against Texas. And up until now, I think it's a really sound one. Stop the run. Every coach will say that. Every defensive coach worth his weight in gold will tell you going into any game they play, got to stop the run. It didn't matter if they got 4 all-pro wide receivers.
Correct.
Coaches love to say, got to stop the run. Well, with this Texas team, it makes a ton of sense. I guarantee you Matt Wells is showing the film against Rice, and he's like, guys, if we let these dudes if we do that against them, they'll go 70 on us. Tackle well, make them go down the field with the football. If we do that, we'll beat this team. And I think it's up to Texas on the offensive side of the ball to expand what it's capable of consistently, so that what is, I think, in the infancy stages of a scouting report on them changes as the weeks go on. Oh, you might have thought that in week 3 or 4, but you can't say that in week 8. It's up to Sarkeesian and this staff to figure out a way to change the book on Texas, because I do think there's a book on Texas for Texas Tech coming into town this weekend. And I'll just say it again, my final thought: Sarkeesian's ability to trust Thompson to open up the passing game down the field, not crazy. I'm not saying that every play's got to be a vertical throw. Even if you're not completing them, though, you have to take your shots. You got to keep defenses honest. You cannot let Texas Tech play almost 11 men within 10 yards of the line of scrimmage and feel safe doing so. And I think going into Saturday's game, there, until Texas proves otherwise, I think Texas Tech's going to try to live that way defensively. And I think it becomes the storyline of the game between Texas and Texas Tech. Just how well that offensive line does, and how much will Sark trust Thompson to stick those throws across the middle of the field that Thompson's proven he can throw and complete, but hasn't yet materialized yet in a Sarkeesian game plan outside of the need on a down. And Texas didn't see, it's one of the reasons why that throw to Dixon stands out so much from Saturday night. It's really the only time they found themselves in 3rd and long. Distance, down in distance, created the need for them to put that out there, and Thompson succeeded. At that point, I think Sarkeesian's got to come away from that saying, okay, we can trust him to do that without feeling like a turnover is coming.
Yeah.
They've got to at least give him a chance. That's my parting shot. Free Casey Thompson a little bit more. Trust him to be able to do offensively something without training wheels. And
I got one more for you.
Okay.
One more. 2 minutes. And I got to run and get my kid from school. So when it comes to Texas versus Texas Tech, this is my question to you. Are we giving Texas too much of the benefit of the doubt?
Probably.
In this game.
Probably, because like I said, my immediate thought is, oh, that's a win. Like it's not even crossing my mind that Texas will lose to Texas Tech. But I think it's going to be a close game.
Yeah. Okay. I'm just curious. And maybe this is something we talk about maybe in another thing this week. Or maybe.
Are you with me? Or you think, I mean, I'm curious. I answered the question.
I as a guy who predicted 8 wins, right?
Yeah.
I've got to look at most of these Big 12 games as coin flips, right? That's it. So I even with the spread and what it may be, Texas Tech has played Texas tough. I mean, they just have. That is, and the narrative that I hate is that when people say, you know what, it's Texas, it's everyone's Super Bowl, right? Everybody gets up for Texas, and that question was being asked today to the players, and it gets asked a lot, and I hate that.
Texas hasn't been good enough to talk about itself like, we're everybody's Super Bowl, and it's like, well, no, you've just been really average, so everybody has a chance against you. And so it feels like it's a Super Bowl, but in reality, you're just another team they're trying to beat. You're not Oklahoma. If you're Texas, you haven't been good enough yet consistently. You're barely finishing seasons ranked in the last 10 years. So, teams aren't treating you like the Super Bowl. They're just licking their chops because they think you're beatable. I guarantee you every team that Texas plays the rest of the way out will lick their chops thinking they can get a piece of Texas.
Yes.
And, Texas got to hammer some teams before they warrant being talked about as, well, we're everybody's Super Bowl. Well,
it came up today. I cringed and may have been caught rolling my eyes when that question was asked in the player breakout session. So, but yeah, I'm going to do some more digging. I'm going to do more analysis. I said originally I thought Texas would lose to Louisiana. I thought they'd beat Arkansas, but and it happened kind of in a flip thing. And we'll get into it more this week. just one of those games where, like you said, we're penciling win and talking about all the good things that need to happen. And there's another part I'm like, I don't know if we're at a point where, other than the Rices of the world, that you can just check a box and act like it's automatic. I don't think Texas, Sarkeesian wants to be there. I don't know if it's there yet. We shall see. All right, that's my final.
Crazy how Texas can be against a team like Rice. Texas can emphatically be dominant. It's fascinating to me how even a slight grade up in competition changes the dynamic so wildly that Texas can be 58-0 against Rice, but a small uptick in competition changes the capacity of what the other team is capable of. I mean, Texas Tech can run the ball a little bit. They can throw the ball a little bit. They're going to be a tough team for Texas to play. It won't be an absolute gimme. We got all week to talk about this here on the Orangebloods Texas Football channel. So we'll talk offensive line, which we weirdly, some of that trust that Sarkeesian has to give to Thompson, he also has to give that offensive line, because the only time Thompson threw an interception is the time they tried to go down the field.
Yes.
Enough time to protect it, turnover. That may have as much to do with, them not wanting to throw the ball down the field as anything else. Is they don't want gel breaks because they can't even project where the hell it's going to come from, because it can come from anywhere. So
it's tricky when you're asking them to let a play develop.
Yeah,
that's tricky.
The receivers are coming back to the huddle and telling the quarterbacks, "Man, I was open." It was like, I wasn't.
Yeah. It's like, and I just got off the ground because of what happened. And of course, they did have the one deep throw that should have been a pass interference that Sarkeesian mentioned.
Yes.
Alluded, but that you probably saw. You said you watched the game multiple times. That looked like a PI.
It was a bad call. Bad no call. Look, for myself and Anwar Richardson, we'll have content throughout the week here on our Orangebloods Texas Football channel. Like this video. Leave in your comments. What do you think? 0-3, 1-2, 2-1, 3-0. What does Texas look like after this next stretch of 3 games, which will largely determine and define what kind of season they're capable of having and where this thing is going? They're unranked as it is. You win 3 games in a row in this stretch, though, and you're probably closer to the top 10 than you are the back end of the top 25 for certain. So tons to play for Anwar Richardson and myself. We got to go get our kids. We'll talk to you later. You guys be good to each other. Later.